All right, guys, we're gonna make a real quick video to end up this unit. We left off at urban migration. We said that 1900, you have 90% of African Americans living in the South because of where slavery ended and everything else, and they don't have the money to leave. So 90% of the country lives in the South, or 90% of the African Americans live in the South. So in the 19 teens and 20s, there's going to be a lot of job opportunities opening up north. So especially because of World War I. World War I creates a lot of job opportunities for all these soldiers who are leaving, vacating jobs. So African Americans are attracted to go to northern cities like Detroit, Pittsburgh, Chicago, wherever to find jobs in these factories. So you begin what's called the Great Migration. The Great Migration lasts in the 19 teens and 20s. This Great Migration attracts thousands and eventually hundreds of thousands of African Americans to come out the South. So it's back to just simple push and pull factors. Pull factors being these jobs opening up north that are vacant because of the war, that attract a lot of folks to leave the South. Push factors to leave the South obviously are things like racism, issues with segregation laws, Jim Crow laws, all those issues. This is also when the boll weevil hits. The boll weevil bug doesn't hit these farms in the South until the early 1900s, wiping out white and black cotton farms across the South, devastating the cotton crop in general. So all those reasons are reasons for these guys to live. The Great Depression slows a lot of this migration down in the 1930s, but the Great Migration will be big in the 19 teens and 20s, really literally pulling hundreds of thousands of African Americans from the South to head up north, where there's still racism, but it's a good bit less racist than what you see in the South. Lastly, you have civil rights organizations that do develop in this time period. So there is some increased in development of civil rights organizations in this time period. One is called the Niagara Movement. The Niagara Movement was made by W.E.B. Du Bois in 1905, and you guessed it, near Niagara Falls, New York. So it was a combination of whites and blacks who came together to meet in Niagara in 1905. Du Bois met with black intellectuals and other white intellectuals to discuss how to take action for equality and also how to promote more African Americans to get into college. That's kind of the overall purpose of the Niagara Movement, was to figure out how to make more black leaders and how to get programs started to get more African Americans into colleges. And actually, because of racism and because of some issues they had in Niagara, they actually had to be on the Canadian side, not on the New York side, because of some of the racism issues they had there. But the whole purpose of Niagara that was made by Du Bois and these blacks and whites, you can kind of see a picture of it here, is to try to develop black leadership in communities and develop more college funds for African Americans. Then the group you really want to be aware of is the NAACP that develops, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, in 1909. W.E.B. Du Bois also helps to develop this organization in 1909. Du Bois, the Niagara Movement, and white progressives were the founders of the NAACP. So Du Bois, the Niagara Movement, and various white progressives were founders of this movement. Their mission was to abolish all forms of segregation and to increase educational opportunities for African American children. So their main mission was to abolish all forms of segregation and to increase educational opportunities for all African American children. NAACP still exists today, with their goals being different but the same ideas. They mainly fought segregation through the court system. They wanted to prove in court that things like segregation and Jim Crow laws were illegal, so that was kind of their main bread and butter. By 1920, they had over 100,000 members. And I have a couple pictures here of NAACP. Du Bois is in a picture of both of them. You can see here in the bottom picture here too. So very prominent group. It's going to be a big factor all the way up to the Civil Rights Movement in the 1950s and 60s, but it starts here in 1909 during the Progressive Era. And lastly, I have the National Urban League. The National Urban League. This was founded in 1911 to help African Americans migrate out the South. So obviously, Southern blacks may still not have a lot of money, but the point of the National Urban League was to help finance the moving of African Americans from the South up north. It wanted to help build up self-reliance and economic advancement as well too. So it wants to help give money to African Americans to get there, help start a family, start a business, those kind of things. make them more economically independent of whites and those kind of things too. So these various groups just to be aware of, because they're all developing during this era, but it's all towards helping African Americans out. But in general, make sure you remember that African Americans overall and their civil rights were not addressed much by the greater progressive movement in general in the 1900s and teens. So that's it. Test tomorrow. Good luck.